Hello and welcome back to the Meta podcast, meta-analysis of everything. I'm Jimmy, and joining me today is Christian Sparks. He is a indie dev, mostly in, Unreal 4 engine. Right now, he's a friend of the show. Basically, I know him through the Fans of the Genre guys, Mikey Krieger, Brian, and Rhodes Clark, shit like that. So, like, we're friends of friends. We're basically best friends already. And we have no idea who either one of us, we just follow each other on Twitter, and that's pretty cool. And so now he's on the show, and we're going to talk about kind of what it's like to be like an indie dev, making a game, passion project. I see a lot of your work on Woodbound, and just kind of like, I love your atmospheric kind of really naturey looking GIFs. As soon as you were posting stuff, I think it was back when you were trying to get like a Unreal Engine kind of like scholarship kind of thing for just like independent work. You were posting a lot about Woodbound, and it was right about the time that Breath of the Wild also came out, and it was like 1-to-1. You're like, these games, you're like, oh my god, look at these grass physics and incredible like forestry and stuff like that. So I guess we're just going to talk about like what got you started on Woodbound as like a project for yourself, and I don't know what's going on recently. I don't know.
Sure. So Woodbound started off, it was like towards the end of 2016. My wife and I spend a ton of time playing a game called Don't Starve together. Which is just like the multiplayer adaptation of Don't Starve by Clay. And for people who don't know, it's just like a little top-down, like Tim Burton-esque little kind of survival game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was kind of missing from the interaction was like increased kind of AI smartness, I guess, intelligence. For the most part, they just kind of do like really basic stuff. And so I thought it'd be cool, like the common complaint with survival games is like, oh, go here, press this button to chop down tree, repeat. I thought it'd be cool to introduce additional mechanics and then kind of let the AI do the menial stuff and then just give them meaning with like their own interactions with each other and then with you in turn. So that's kind of how it started out. It's shifted around a lot while I've been working on it because it's been such a freeform project. I don't work in video games professionally. I work in IT by day, so all of my stuff in Unreal and for Woodbound is all just in my downtime. And so the shape of Woodbound today is a lot different than when it started out, and the visuals are too. It started out looking a lot grittier and kind of darker, and then I decided to try and go for like a cleaner aesthetic just because I didn't like how noisy everything was. And then that was when I started kind of getting some eyes on it, which was really awesome. So
yeah,
the first thing people said when I did the art style update and posted like a gameplay little GIF, people were like, take out top down, no more top down. You need to be able to look around everywhere and look at everything. And it's like, that's fair. And then from there, it was like, well, it's not really in the spirit of Don't Starve anymore if it's not top down, so it's not really survival. And so ever since, it's just been kind of like playing around with a bunch of different mechanics and trying to see what sticks and working towards putting together.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I feel like a lot of people who I follow on Twitter are like, counselor by day, indie dev, podcaster, shit by night. And
sure,
I feel like it's so common. Like I'm not a full-time podcaster. This is my night job, so to speak. Like,
sure.
So it's cool that it is such like a common thing for so many people to, I mean, including yourself, to just be like, you got to pay the bills. Like, I get it. You got to pay the bills. Shit's going on in life. And then you're like, but I want to make a game. So it's just crazy to me that, like, it's a shared experience that so many people are kind of getting into their hobbies a lot more intensely. And I feel like Unreal has really, like the Unreal Engine being free has really facilitated that for so many people now. It's like an option. Like when I was starting out, I don't know, I took some like in high school, for instance, I took a computer science class where we learned Java. And like the end of the class, we ended up like adding physics to circles, and it was like a fucking ball. Like it was just balls. And I was like, cool, this is great. Thanks, Java. And the tool, like that was a tool I didn't even have available to me in a personal respect. So what is it? Has there been like a journey from, were you always interested in the Unreal Engine, or did you have previous entries with like Unity or some other game making program, for instance?
Unreal has been like the craziest like section of the journey for sure. Mm-hmm. For like a multitude of reasons. I first got like, I mean, I think I've kind of always had on a subconscious level like a desire to do something creative in this capacity. Like I used to write like what I now understand to be design docs. I used to write those like in a little notepad when I was like 12.
Nice.
Like,
nice.
Oh, this would be my perfect game, blah, blah, blah. Which I'm sure lots of people did anyway. But I got a PC when I turned like 20 or 21. Because my friend was like, you need to play Minecraft. And I did.
I mean, they weren't wrong.
Yeah, they weren't wrong. Exactly. And so then I got Fallout 3 for PC and started playing around with the mods for that. And that was kind of like a snowball where I got interested in mods. And then my friend suggested I check out CryEngine, because back then CryEngine was the one that was free, and Unreal was the one that was on the subscription model, and Unity had like a free and subscription model. But I've tried Unity a few times. More recently I had a bit more success with it, but it hasn't stuck as much as Unreal. But anyway, I played around with CryEngine for like a year, mostly just doing like level design stuff and playing around with post-processing effects and stuff. Right. And then I made the switch to Unreal and played with it for a few months, and it just immediately like clicked in my head.
That's awesome.
So it's
that's funny. I mean, the immediate thing though with like why I reached out to you as well is all the GIFs and stuff that you've posted of your just like I don't know, like you were messing with some lighting where you were like, you had like a colored light on different levels with a just like basic UE4 model like running around in it. And the projector, like the low latency, like just even like the fun random GIFs and videos you've posted are just like, to me, high level shit that I'm just like, I don't even like It's
really funny because most of like I feel like I cheat to get most of the stuff that I have done. Like,
right.
Not that there's, I don't know. I want to phrase it carefully, but basically, like, I have a huge amount of respect for people who have the capacity to do photorealistic stuff really, really well.
Oh yeah.
There's a guy on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should follow him. His name is Mackenzie Shirk. He works on a game called Dead Matter. His stuff is just like outrageous. It's so good, and he just consistently pumps it out. And I have no idea how he does it. And then you turn to my stuff, and it's pretty much just like I'm trying to compose things geometrically, like on like a high level.
Yeah.
And then just making colors that look good together. Like my trees don't have any bark texture; they're just brown color. The leaves are just like an alpha mask with a color applied to them. Like really, really basic stuff. I take what I enjoy working with visually and try and make it look.
Yeah, I feel like you've managed to strike gold in your visual style. Like immediately what you've created is like a style. Like it's something like when you look at Wind Waker or a game that's fully fleshed out and like a cell shaded something like that, and you're like, oh, okay. Like that's the hardest thing for me that I've seen is so many like quote unquote completed games that I've seen on Steam or, free to play have conflicting styles where images, like you can tell that it was, I don't know, like you obviously put a lot of care and like time into modeling and coloring, like colorizing. I don't know. You're technically sound in what you've been achieving as far as what I've seen.
Thank you. I think games like Wind Waker really those authentic styles really stand the test of time because there's not anything else that looks like it. And so, again, not knocking on photorealism at all, but in 10 years, NVIDIA's gonna, or not even 10 years, in 2 years, NVIDIA's gonna have like a $300 ray tracing card that's just gonna make everything else that's out right now that looks amazing not look as good. Yeah. And that's kind of the constant theme with photorealism is it's constantly evolving. And so then you end up looking back at games. I remember thinking that like the first Red Dead Redemption, when it came out, I was like, this is the most amazing game I've ever seen. And then going back today, it holds up, but then you compare it to Red Dead 2 and it doesn't hold up.
This is a garbage desert, actually.
Right. But then when you have like something that is, and it's hard because it's so subjective, but when you have something that's like more abstract and more stylized, if it has that authentic look and it's like consistent across its composition and like you can look at it and identify it like at a glance, like that's when you've hit gold. Yeah. And not to toot my own horn at all, because I'm terrified of coming off looking like a douchebag, but I think that I, at least for me, have found like my style. Whether it's good or not, I've found my style and I'm really, really happy because I'm able to just kind of expand on that.
Yeah, that feels like a safe way to say that. No, but I feel that is the constant struggle of people who are interested in making games or even not games, something that has its own style and is eye-catching or, like an earworm or something to that effect where you can seemingly effortlessly, like obviously it's a ton of effort to put into photorealism, stylistic choices, what have you. It's again like it's striking gold when you have something that someone's like, oh, like this is Christian Sparks' Woodbound. It's not some other game. It's not for the Forest or some other survival-y game. It's cool to see you working towards a very interesting stylistic game. I don't really know if there's a point to that, but it's something I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. For sure.
So you're working on a game part-time. Mm-hmm. Is it like always a nighttime thing? Is it you come home from work, you're tired, you get on your computer?
It honestly, it waxes and wanes, if that's the right phrase.
Sure, like at the moon.
Right, yeah. So, like, going back to the beginning of last year, from January until the beginning of May, I would average between, like, 4 and 5 hours of sleep a night. Just, like, cracking hard, really hard at the game, regardless of how tired I was. Destroying myself with energy drinks, being really irresponsible about it, but because I was like so focused and like talking about I don't know, just like finding your style is cool because if you find something that you enjoy working with and it happens to appeal to people, that's awesome. If you're trying to work on something that does appeal to people but doesn't fit with you, it's so much harder to work on it. And so I think it was a lot easier then to drive myself that hard and work on it all the time. And the whole reason that I was doing that is that kind of imposed a deadline on myself to put together a demo to shop around to publishers so that I can eventually not have to go work at my day job. Not that it's not a good job. It's just not what I want to be doing.
Exactly.
And so that ended up kind of blowing up in my face because I overdid it so much. I didn't really keep track of my goals as well as I should have. And so the demo that I ended up shopping to 2 publishers was going to end up going out to like 6 or 7. And I cut it off really quickly because it was not a great demo.
I gotcha.
And so then from like May until September or October, I was completely burnt out and
caught up with it.
Yeah, exactly. I just, it was really, really hard to get myself to sit for any amount of time and work on stuff. And so for like literally weeks to sometimes like a month or a month and a half at a time, I wouldn't open the project at all.
It was cursed.
Yes, exactly. And it sucks. Like I feel like I don't know to what like degree I've talked about it before online, because I'm like really nervous too, because like people are like really stoked to see it and to see it come to fruition and to play with it. And I'm like as grateful as I possibly can be for that, because not everyone has that opportunity to have eyes on their project.
Right.
And it sounds like ungrateful, but at the same time, like it's so hard to work, outside of game dev by day and then come home, and then I have 2 kids, we have a mortgage. I have like this like hierarchy of things that are dependent on me being there first, and so then all of my available energy afterwards, if I can put that towards the game, that's awesome, and I get stuff done. And if I am completely depleted, then there's nothing I can do. And then that compounds with people being excited about the game, because then when I go, weeks or months at a time without an update, I start getting like messages and emails, or like, ats on Twitter asking about the game, which again is super cool. But it's so stressful sometimes.
Definitely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's half they're like super interested, and then it's the other half is you like, man, I barely am finished with the like Cape simulator when I started.
Right. Well, and it's just like it adds up. Like I feel like most successful, I don't want to say this is like a blanket statement, but like a lot of successful indie developers have typically started with other projects or have worked with studios in the past.
Right.
And I've worked on other projects and done like contract work for people, but I haven't shipped a game before. Mm-hmm. And so when I have, my first major thing that people are excited about, and I want to look at maybe refactoring how much is reasonable for me to do within an allotted time period, or if I want to cut things out, it makes it super, super stressful to make those decisions, because I feel like I'm letting people down, or letting myself down.
Definitely.
I think it's a really common thing, I think, too, with developers. I've talked to a bunch of different people that I've been really fortunate to have met through Twitter. Like Twitter, if you're making games and you're not on Twitter, then you're doing it wrong, because Twitter is like the perfect place. It doesn't matter what engine you use, what art style you use. If you're on Twitter and you're making a game and you're not a dick, then you're going to find people to hang out with and talk with, and that is like a serious necessity.
Seriously,
because
it's a great collaborative
people go
tool
nuts
at this point.
Yeah. It is. People go nuts, and you have to have people to talk to. And I've been fortunate enough to meet people who have gone through the same stuff, and being able to have somebody, it sounds dramatic, but like talk you off that ledge, you know what I mean? Like it's just like it's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's really cool.
You get the solidarity. So, it's pretty great.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know it's crazy, because I feel like a lot of independent developers, or stories that I've heard are, I worked for a AAA game developer and now I set out on my own. So it's like, that to me is people who have already been in the industry and shipped a game, and so they know like point A to point B how to do it. Right. And so being in your shoes, like not in the industry, but it's crazy to me, because you're in the industry technically. Like the industry at this point is such a vague term. You're an independent developer. You're making a game for yourself at this point.
Yeah, I don't like when people like gatekeep over stuff like that. Yeah. And I mean, everybody is guilty of some kind of gatekeeping at some point. Like I made some dumb argument at one point about how SketchUp wasn't valid for modeling, even though
Shit, I've done it in this podcast. Don't worry.
That's that's what I started off with. And like, no, if you're making a game and you're passionate about it, and that's it. That's all you have to do.
That's the two criteria. Yeah,
right.
I completely agree. And so it's cool to me that I mean, it's even to me. I understand wanting to go full time, and then you see there's like a daunting step of, Kickstarters or Indiegogo or shit like that, where people are like, support me on Patreon and I'll make a game or something. And then there's been all the backlash of failed Kickstarters or Kickstarters that went through and then the people didn't actually deliver on their promises. And so to me, there's been like a building tension of all these, funding sites where people have been, the creators have been shitty, the fan base has been shitty. Like, it's been both sides, interestingly enough, like, to me, making like a huge shitstorm over something that we should have figured out by now.
Sure.
And I'm just like, creators get money to make things. And
right.
It's even like, I understand if you go on Kickstarter, to me, even now, Kickstarter for games is insane because there's tiers. You have to have planned content beyond just releasing a game. Like, oh, I'm giving $10. I don't get a signed copy of a piece of wood. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, so I feel like, again, there's like, it builds on this like entitlement thing, I guess, where you're making the game. It's your own stylistic thing. And not that the people who are asking you like how's it coming along are entitled, but I think there is like a small bit for other people with more established series, like, when the fuck Borderlands 3, it doesn't have everything I want. So I think that you being detached from this like AAA, publishers and stuff, it's the crushing defeat of sending off to publishers stuff that you're unhappy with, but also like you can kind of do whatever you want to an extent. Like, do you feel it's kind of freeing to some extent?
It's definitely freeing. I know, like, it's it juxtaposes perfectly with like stuff that I've done for like contract work where I don't have like creative control at all. I'm just like following a set of rules.
Right.
And I mean, anybody who's done contracting before, I'm sure has had like their nightmare contractor story where the creative vision, changes and the goalposts shift, a bunch of times. And I had that happen with one particular contract that it was supposed to be 2 weeks worth of work and it ended up lasting 7 months.
Oh boy.
And that was while I was working on Woodbound still. Like that was like within that time frame. So that sucked a bunch of time up too. But it's I can see it from both sides for people who see things on Kickstarter. I think a lot of it has to do with, I guess, perception. A lot of people have put their stuff out on Kickstarter in an attempt to bring the community that they're trying to cultivate into their creative vision. And then I think because that's been such a commonplace thing, I think some people maybe think that is the case universally with Kickstarter projects. And that's obviously not always the case. Some people have their creative vision in mind and they're trying to find people who agree with that vision to fund it without dipping their fingers in it. And that's why they're not going to a publisher necessarily, because that is something that commonly happens. Mm-hmm. And so I can see why people get upset with Kickstarter delays if they're looking forward to a game. I don't think it's cool when people say really nasty things. I don't subscribe to the mantra that, oh, this is the internet, toughen up. Like, no, this is the internet, but you're a person behind a screen, so don't be a piece of shit.
Where's your humanity, man?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, let's try and save some semblance of it. I think that there's a huge amount of opportunity, and again, this comes from just having a pretty awesome experience with Twitter. That there's a lot of positivity out there. If you're genuine and you have a plan, and you have something that is promising, like Kickstarter is a no-brainer. That being said, it's very difficult, and you have to prep and do your research, talk to people who have done it before.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. But I don't think like a lot of people think that like Kickstarter is just like done, or like that it's been abused too much and doesn't have merit anymore. And I don't think that's true. Just like with anything, it has a lot of mileage left for sure. And I think it's a great avenue for indies.
Sure. I feel like, yes, crowdsourcing to me is still such a viable option for so many projects. And there's like a D&D podcast, Critical Role is extremely popular, and they were like, let's get $700,000, and they get like $8 million for like, of course they're all semi-famous voice actors in Overwatch and other stuff, but to go in with such a low bar and then their fan base just be like $8 million, like that must feel incredible for them.
I love stories like that.
Yeah. So it's not dead. Like that's today. Like when this episode comes out, like that Kickstarter is probably still going on. So I love that you've found a community in Twitter, though, because all the stories of Twitter are like, it's full of Nazis, but it's like, it's so obvious, like what you said, where as long as you're genuine, like you'll find your community that is who you're actually wanting to connect with. Because if you're disingenuous on like Twitter, you'll be fucking outed. Like,
oh yeah,
so
immediately.
Hard. Yeah,
immediately.
It's so easy to tell. Like, if you're just a dick, even if you're like faking, I don't know. That's the thing. I've had people, they fake the nice persona because they're just like a salesperson, and so you're like,
right,
okay, cool. Sell me your thing, but don't like lie to me. I don't know.
Right. That's like, I think that's like a lot of, I live in a pretty conservative area of Southwest Washington, and the common theme, like, and this is going to get like dangerously political here, but like the whole, like the Me Too movement thing, for example, is something that I hear criticized all the time around here. Because, some people are going to think that everyone is lying about their story, and other people are going to think that nobody ever is lying about it. And like blanket statements like that don't help. Like Twitter's a great example. Like if you see one person saying that this person is disingenuous and it's one person saying it, then maybe that's not the case. If you can see, or as often happens on Twitter, multiple people can come and confirm this piece of information, it's probably the case. And then if you just use your intuition like a fucking human being, it's pretty easy to tell who sucks and who doesn't. Like there's tons of nasty Nazi shit on Twitter, but it's really easy to weed through it and have it removed from your timeline. Like I find myself enjoying my scrolling experience every day on Twitter way more than Facebook.
Oh, definitely. I avoid Facebook like the plague.
Yeah,
like the plague exactly. Wasteland it is. But yeah, no, that's what's crazy to me, because I feel like 5 years ago or whenever the fuck I started using Twitter, it didn't have this cool game dev community as out in the open and as like easily accessible. Like I feel like my podcast, like this podcast account, the metadata account is just like 2,000 accounts I want to follow game dev people. And then Twitter's like, I'm sorry, you can't follow any more people. You're probably a bot. And I'm like, no, I just want to follow game devs.
Right.
Like everyone's posting shit on Screenshot Saturday stuff. There's so many like game dev, game jams, shit like that, where people are just constantly posting weekly jams, pixel jams, that weird small Pico is
the Pico,
Pico jam, shit like that. And I'm just like, every day I can scroll for like 200 tweets and just see like a shit ton of good game dev stuff. I'm like, people are creating stuff on like a huge scale.
Well, and I feel
day.
like that whole subsection of Twitter too, like the people who contribute to it really help push to the top like the really wholesome stuff. And so like going through, you just see stuff that's like heartwarming, not just like the content, but then the people behind it. Because Twitter makes it so easy to like. I feel like this whole podcast is just a plug for Twitter. Like Jack is going to be fucking stoked when he sees this come up. Yeah. But no, like, you know, just by virtue of how it works, like, you know, people push all this awesome, you know, responses from developers or questions back and forth. Like there's just these, it's like walking in a lunchroom full of game developers and being able to stop in and lean in on conversations everywhere. It's fucking great.
It's great because of the wide array of people that are also using it. You have like well-known indie devs. I don't know, like Spelunky. The guy who made Spelunky's on there tweeting shit. Fucking, I don't think Todd Howard does it, but like, you know, like it's from like fucking AAA president to whoever the fuck, and it's that like
like
wide variety.
Jane Ung from Campo Santo is really active on there.
Oh my god.
Raphael von Lyrope, and I probably said his last name wrong. The guy who leads the guys who made The Long Dark Hinterland studio.
Yeah.
They're super active. I remember my first thing on Twitter when I was like just starting to post game development stuff. I was like doing Don't Starve all the time, and so I added Clay, and they responded within like 2 minutes flat, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. I'm never not using this.
Yeah, it's pretty insane when you can like reach out to a favorite creator of yours in whatever aspect, and when they reply, even a favorite is now like they noticed me, senpai.
Right. And like great. Even people who like aren't like I talk about like, you know, the Hinterland guys or like the people from Campo Santo or Clay or whoever. Like I look at it like I'm looking up at them
exactly,
and they're like reaching down. But then like there's also people that are like contemporaries that are like closer to my level that still are just putting out like amazing stuff, and just being able to have them like easily accessible to talk to. Like I have like a chat group with like 3 people who I like immensely look up to, that I can just like we share ideas and screenshots and stuff all the time. Like it's just so cool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like exclusive or like, you know, clicky or anything like that. It's just we all agree on stuff, and so it's easy to talk. Like
that's pretty great.
It's so cool.
Yeah, where's all that ad money I should be getting, Twitter?
Right, I know. This is just gushing on Twitter all day, for real.
It's great that you can use this social media platform for your own means, because they never... I feel like Twitter's whole thing is just like, fuck it, whatever, tweet.
Sure.
And you're just like, actually, I want to... put my own stuff out there, and people do it. It's a great community of communities where
yes, absolutely,
you have to actively go out and do it, because it is a shit hole. Like if you like step 2 steps outside of your own community, but like if you're following the people, then if you're blocking the people that suck, then you're good. That's all. That's all I've noticed.
It's super easy to curate a timeline that you're interested in, for sure.
So thanks, @Jack. Fucking
thank you.
Give me some money. No. So, are there any games that have? I mean, you mentioned like Fallout and survival games like that. Is there a certain genre of game or specific game that super like inspired you at a young age, where you were writing, your own docs about your own made up games? Like, is there something like fucking Pac-Man or something where you can like pinpoint, oh yeah, this is an early gaming experience that kind of pushed you towards game dev in general?
That's a great question. I think the most memorable one that I have, I don't think it was the earliest necessarily, but it's the one that sticks with me the most, was after playing the first BioShock when it came out, and the idea of like it was such like the simple concept, but like rolling up on people, killing them, as you do, and then being able to loot them individually instead of having like the items drop or whatever, like that compacted inventory. And that had been done before, but like the way that they handled it, that was just immediately clicked. And I was like, what if I put this in like a Battlefield style game, or in like a, you know, a big open, like this, I didn't know. I was super sheltered when I was younger. Like, I wasn't allowed on the internet until I moved out, basically. And so, like, I didn't know that, like, you know, larger scale PC shooters were a thing. So I was like, what if you could have a PC or like a big shooter with tons of people, and then you could loot their bodies? And then that's a thing now, like, everywhere. But it was just like the idea of being able to put stuff like that together and lay out ideas for map designs and safe areas and stuff like that. That was definitely the one that sticks with me the most.
That's great.
I think the one game that probably I look to for inspiration the most is, and this is a super cliche answer, but the Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh, okay.
Just because of like your character feels like so like grounded and physically consistent.
Oh, definitely.
And so does everything else in the world. Like everything, like you feel so minuscule compared to everything that you're going up against, and every action feels like it has like a serious reaction and consequence. You know what I mean? And that's hard to make fun. That's what I've been doing, like pretty much this whole time with Woodbound, is trying to make like persistent physicality, not super overly simulaty or
not just math
or boring.
Of the game. Yeah,
right, exactly. Like I literally had like a section where I was like, oh man, it'd be really cool if you had to like individually put in the items in your cart without like a 2D UI. Like you grab the thing and then you put it in, and then I put that together and I played with it, and I was like, this fucking sucks. It took me like 10 minutes to sort my inventory. Yeah, it's been like 2 days in game. This is bullshit. I don't want to do this. Nice. So like stuff like that like really helps me. Like I thought that 2D UIs, like the drag and drop UIs, were so overdone, but like having like played around with a 3D one, like I get why they're necessary, and they're actually not overdone at all, and they're super good.
It's kind of like you're trying to learn and adapt from stuff, and at the same time you're like, but what if I did something new? Oh, I see why all these games are doing it that way.
Yes, exactly. And like it's good, I think, to push for stuff that's new, even if it doesn't work. Like there's still ways that I can make that 3D representation work. Like I can do like what I'm trying to do most recently is like the 2D representation of moving items with the the drag and drop, but then still having them physically show and organize in your cart.
Cool, yeah.
And so like just having things take up physical space so that they have at least a tiny bit of meaning besides just being a little tile on a
like
grid.
Minecraft 64 stacks of 64 cobblestone, and you're like, I'm carrying a full 3,000 metric tons of fucking wood. Yeah, and you're just guys like, I'm gonna walk in fucking Minecraft.
And like if that's how it works for your game, then like that's totally fine. If that's how you want to set it up. That's just like I wanted everything to have like a real physical weight, just like in Shadow of the Colossus. And so some things made sense to stack, like I had like a grid system for the 3D thing, and so like having a grid that fits a big piece of wood doesn't make sense to have the same grid size for like a clump of berries or something like that. But then do you get into like breaking down sizes more and more, and then you're organizing little things, or do you just like kind of compromise and say, okay, shit like berries can probably stack up to a certain degree in this grid, just like you would in 2D. So
that's cool.
I think compromises make sense for stuff like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like how you were describing everything having this like physical weight. I mean, they fucking nailed weight with Shadow of the Colossus. Like everything moves so great, but then there's like the lizards for health, and you're just like, I don't fucking understand what these like. I get
that just seemed so phoned in. Like if there was some kind of way or like different object that they did that made more sense in context to the lore, and they still just introduced it not by telling you but by showing you, like shit like that is really cool. But when it's literally just like, oh, quick, we need a way to upgrade you, lizards, and then they shipped it, like that's not as interesting, I guess.
And see, that's one of the interesting things is because of how like rushed that one mechanic seems. I wonder if it literally was rushed. Like they were like, oh fuck, I guess we have to figure out how to give health to the player more. And the game ships in 2 months, and also like we have to ship it because we won't have jobs if we don't do it. And they're like, lizards. So yeah, it comes down to like deadlines, I guess. It's kind of crazy.
And I think that's where that double-edged sword of being independent comes in, because like on one hand, you know, like feature creep is a serious concern for anybody, because it's really easy to get into this loop of like, well, what if I did this, and then you do it, and then what if I do, you know, and that just goes on for months and months.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you have something that or like a set of things that you're really concrete about that make sense, that serve everything, you know, cohesively and cooperatively, the worst thing that you can have happen to you is somebody say, nope, you don't have time. Like Shadow of the Colossus was supposed to have like a ton more Colossi included, and they couldn't, and that sucks. And so while I get like really, really anxious about taking as much time as I am with Woodbound, I'm really glad that I can, because if, you know, my 3D inventory didn't work well and I was out of time and had to ship it, that would suck, because then I have to go and, because it's my baby, so I have to go show it to people and be like, oh, this, I'm so proud of this, but not this bit. Like, this bit sucks. Yeah,
not this
I don't want to have anything like that.
It's in the game, though.
Yeah, like, I don't want to have any parts of the game where I'm like, yeah, I wasn't really stoked on that, because I'm literally, like, I'm the one doing it, so I say when it's done. So if I say it's done and it's not, then that just makes me look like a dumbass. So...
Yeah. Well, it's how it goes.
So anyone impatient, I'm just trying to do it perfectly. So frig off.
Perfection is achievable in Unreal Engine. Okay,
it's only going to take me like 15 years.
It's
just
unreal.
Be patient.
It's unreal how real it is. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like that's the story I've heard from an outward perspective. I'm glad that I'm hearing it from you firsthand, because I've watched, I watched that one very popular documentary about Fez, where like Phil Fish just fucking like breaks down and he goes to some event like PAX or something, and the demo literally is broken. And like he has a mental breakdown, and the like soundtrack guy's just like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And so it's I think it was his was Kickstarted, so it actually had like some deadline to it. But yeah, it's a common thread that I've seen is just like people freaking out over deadlines.
I actually have I went to do a Kickstarter really early on, like right after I did my first visual refactoring posts. I followed some really bad advice from a friend who was like, oh, you could just do it on the art. Totally could. And I was like, oh my God, I could. And I could quit my job right now. And so I did. And I put together this really, really terrible Kickstarter pitch, and I canceled it within the first 10 hours because I got like a flood of emails that were like, dude, your game looks good, but no, not yet. And so I canceled it. So I was like really freaking out. And I had just watched the indie game movie, and I watched it again like a couple times.
Indie game movie, yeah.
And so then I ended up going to, this was like a couple weeks before it was a couple months before PAX, because PAX West is in September. So that year I went to PAX, and I actually met Tommy Reffinez from Team Meat.
Okay.
And I feel really bad because like I wanted to meet him because I knew he was going to be there, and I had seen him in the indie game movie, and I like fangirled out. I was like so stoked to meet him, and I walked up and I was like, oh my God, I loved your perspective in Indie Game the movie. It really helped me. And that whole movie, he's just like, I fucking hate my life and I don't want to do this anymore. And so I just like, he's like, you know, he's not that he was doing anything wrong. He's just trying to make his game, you know, but like he's doing so much better now. Like he's like, you see him in the movie, and then you see him lately, and he's like super fit. And you know, taking really good care of himself, and doing really well with game development. Exactly. And so I just like walked up and I was like, hey, remember when you were fucking miserable? I loved that. Thank you for sharing, you know. But like regardless of like how bad that was, it really did like help me to see that perspective from like bigger name people like that.
Yeah. I felt like you felt, but you don't feel like that anymore. But maybe.
Yeah, and like I don't even remember like what he said back. Like I walked up to him and my friend took a picture of me with him. And he's like, you know, we're both smiling, but like right before like I said it, and I don't even remember what he responded with, but I was just like, why the fuck did I say that? Like, why couldn't I have just said that I love your game or something, you know,
something cooler. Act cool, Christian.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, heroes. I forgot how many perspectives of just like, fuck, I don't like. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and then that's like the denouement of the video, or like. Or you're like, shit.
Yes.
And then they release the game, and you're like, okay, I guess it's smoothed out. But like, they seemed miserable for a little bit there. I don't really know.
Yeah. Edward McMillan is like, I feel like I'm fucking trapped in my house. I can't do anything.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's how I feel. And I was just like wallowing in that feeling, and it wasn't
not a
best approach
thing to share.
Not at all.
But I mean, you did have like, again, it was like a solidarity, but you're like, I probably should have just like tweeted at him that.
Yeah, it was a super cathartic thing that should have just been for me, and I tried to connect with him that way, and that wasn't the right way to do it. Yeah. And you know, lesson learned. He probably isn't gonna ever remember that because it was, you know, a 5-minute interaction at PAX, but. Regardless of how I fucked up, I'm always going to remember that story.
And now it is emblazoned on this podcast for all time.
Yep. Tommy Reffin is, if you see this podcast, I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable.
If you see it, I'm very surprised because it's an audio.
Or if you listen to it. Sorry, I see the video here on our...
oh, yeah. I'm like literally talking to you. I'm like, I see you. I'm from Avatar, man. Yeah.
My webcam's not on.
Yeah.
No, anyway.
No, it's funny to have that solidarity, but then like totally just be like, fuck, no. Yeah. Real
Don't
life.
meet your heroes, not because your heroes are dicks, but because you are not ready to meet them ever.
Yeah. That feels about right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. I guess because that movie's all about like game dev teams, like it was always like a couple of guys. How is it different to you just doing it all solo? Like the thing that I've seen is a lot of people are solo indie game dev. Like it's just me. That's it.
I mean, I see why people take pride in something like that. Mm-hmm. That makes me super uncomfortable just because it seems like they're kind of trying to signal or trying to like, you know, quantify their accomplishments. Yeah. Like if your stuff is good and people like it, then you don't need to slap another hat on that hat. You know what I mean? And I've worked with other people on Woodbound before.
There you go. Collaborative efforts.
My issue, and this isn't me trying to be like, I do it solo because I'm, you know, blah, 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 whatever. My issue is that I have a completely fucked schedule, and the people that I have been able to work with are in different time zones. So, you know, working together with someone is just going to put a ton of stress on me to feel like I'm letting them down on top of me letting me down and people down out there, you know. So if I can just like minimize my own anxiety damage as much as possible to just good. Me.
Yeah.
Then that's what I'm basically, that's my reason.
Not going to try and pass it off on others. I get you.
Right. Definitely.
Okay. So yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I feel like if you're trying, it's a healthier thing to ask for help like at every corner if you have that ability, and calling yourself like solo indie game dev and I did everything, the music, and it is kind of like a weird, you're trying to like make yourself into some like hero, or I don't know. I get it.
I think that people who
you,
do accomplish no.
Yeah.
Like I think that people who do accomplish their goals solo, especially with something as wide-ranging as game development, I think that they deserve to be recognized for that to whatever degree. But like I've met a couple people who are just like kind of obnoxious about it. Like that's like their whole persona, you know what I mean? And so you know, I try to, I guess, gently suggest that like don't don't put yourself at the forefront of what you're accomplishing. Put your work at the forefront, and then people are going to flock to you because you made it. Yeah. If you're making it about yourself more than your work, then you're like, people aren't going to connect with it as much.
Yeah.
Or people are going to see through it and see, you know, what your real motives are. Like any other developer, I have, you know, big dreams of being able to, you know, share my work with people that I look up to at some point. And, you know, talk about development if they're interested in it or whatever. But especially like when you're posting it online, like people are going to take whatever perception they have of you from that, and they're going to run away with it. And so it's better to, you know, I guess like speak softly and carry a big stick, so to speak.
A big
with your
game
art.
Dev stick.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take away anything from anybody who is doing it solo because it's fucking hard as hell. But yeah, I would caution people from pursuing solo stuff because it's hard. If you can help it,
if you have a support group
to talk to.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I get you.
I think that's a huge mistake that I routinely make, is being too nervous to talk to anybody about anything, because I feel like the second that I admit that I don't have everything down, that I'm failing, and that's not the case. The biggest thing that I have figured out in making games isn't how to make games or how to do things. It's how human you and everyone around you is, and how much everyone is fucking up all the time. Like somebody said it on Twitter. It was like life or development and life in general is just walking around and tripping and falling down and getting up and talking about it. Like that's it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
That's the secret to life.
Yeah. It's hilarious because I feel like that's what I'm trying to like achieve by talking to you and other people in Dabiz, is like seeing the cohesion of all these stories of people who are working at a studio, people who are contracting, stuff like that. I mean, I'm only a third interview in. Again, thank you. Third interview. Look, top 3 for you. But like even just interviewing 3 people, I'm like seeing the thread of just like people are people. Like I don't think anyone knows what they're doing ever.
Right.
And that's just me talking to everyone.
You're going in to talk about video games and you come out feeling like a psychologist, essentially. like everyone is just like, I don't want to talk about games. I want to talk about my feelings because I'm going fucking crazy. Like,
yeah,
that's 9 times out of 10 when I really get into the meat of a conversation with another developer. It's like, man, this is like, life is crazy. It's not about games anymore. It's just about life.
To me, growing up, like, that's so much more interesting. And
yes.
Like when I started this podcast with a couple of my friends, like we would just talk about games, and I realized that the more fun episodes were when we like had mind fucks about something related to the game, and we're like, oh my God, like we had like a brain blast, and I was like, I want to have this with just like everyone. And I feel like the common experience is, if you make games, you've played video games. So you have that kind of mindset. You know, like, how to play a game. It doesn't really matter. But when you're making a game, it's a completely different experience. So that's all I wanted. Like, this has been, like, end interview. We're good. Like, this was fantastic. I mean, it has pretty much been an hour, so I think we will wrap it up.
Sure.
Because, this is just perfect. What a cap. It's so good.
Yeah.
I am so thankful to have talked with you today. I'm excited to talk with more people and share pretty much the same exact conversation, but from a different perspective. And that's the whole thing.
Right. Thank you for being receptive to talking to me face to face for the first time and having me, bare my soul essentially on the experience. I appreciate it for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very cathartic for sure.
I'm super happy to talk with you, and down the line, I'd be happy to talk again, see your development updates of Woodbound, or just talk about our feelings again. 'Cause that's what would happen again.
I'll try to have some more. Maybe a trailer by the next time we talk,
Dude,
so that I can actually have some meat.
There we go. Either way, I'll probably be sharing your like Twitter on the podcast page or whatever to the 3 people who listen.
Thank you.
But not to bring it back to Twitter, but like I just reached out to you on Twitter. I was like, hey, you're developing a game. You want to chat? Yeah. And you were like, yeah. And I was like, sweet, I love this.
Yeah, no, like I seriously love Twitter. Like again, this is gonna be so dumb, but I always have to brag about this any chance I get, and even though it doesn't fit here, I'm gonna do it anyway.
It's like, oh no, it's fading out. The podcast.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah, whoops. No, the art director from Firewatch, Ollie Moss. I ended up like very, very briefly getting to work with him on a little side thing a while ago.
That's cool.
And it didn't end up coming to fruition. They ended up kind of scrapping it. But like just that brief time, that was like really cool getting to meet and talk with him. He bought me a copy of The Witness because I had never played it, and he was like, "I can't believe you've never played this." And so that all happened because the guy that he was working with was just scrolling through Twitter and saw my shit and reached out to me. Like,
that's so cool.
It's so cool.
That's
like
so cool.
if you see shit that you like on Twitter and you want to reach out, don't be crazy and run up to them at PAX and start crying. Just hit them up on Twitter and you're good to go.
Go to PAX and like, I need a hug.
Makes it happen.
No, just internet hug them on Twitter.
Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you, Christian. This was fun. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Thanks for listening to me.
Yes.
Thanks, listeners, for listening to us. This has been the Meted Podcast. You have been meted. Bye.
Bye.